God news evidence. Why did he spell lowercase g? That's weird. At least here it's caps. Normally when you lowercase, that's for Lucifer and his fallen angels. And all the demonic entities that pretend to be the different religious entities that the nations would worship. And apparently now Israel for some time has been doing with Kabbalah and Babylonian mysticism, Jewish black magic, and they want to foist that upon the world. But that is a discussion for another day. So let's see what he has to say.
Well, one of the responses to the question of slaughter, ethnic cleansing, the utter destruction of the Canaanites, I answer that, at least in part, we have hyperbole or exaggeration going on in the Old Testament. So, for example, we will see mention of, in Joshua, nations that are utterly destroyed. But then we see those same nations or peoples still on the scene later on in the book of Joshua. But this is standard language where you have a lot of people who are utterly destroyed, nothing is left alive that breathes, and then you have lots of survivors. It's sort of like our sports trash talk. We totally destroyed them. We annihilated the enemy. Well, they had ancient Near Eastern trash talk, where we utterly destroyed them and so forth. But the people kept on living. Yes, they may have won a victory. Sometimes it may even have been a stalemate, but the person recounting it might say, we totally trashed them. It's as though they never existed. That's the sort of thing that we have going on in the ancient Near East.
There's the wisdom you have coming from the UK. And because he's a professor, you need to listen to what he has to say. Couldn't possibly be anything else. To which I communicated, and very much per these topics, hyperbole is not good enough. Joshua's men did not follow directions to wipe out the Canaanites and the other similar groups, Amorites, blah, 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 blah. Which, by the way, Derek Gilbert and Michael Heiser are really good about explaining to you that the Amorites were some of the root people that when you continue looking forward and looking forward and looking forward, there will be an influence and a changing of the people culture and direction to the Assyrians eventually. The Assyrians are the predecessor before the Babylonians, and much more could be said about that, but just to keep it really, really simple, of course, we know about the Babylonian captivity. And of course, now in 2019, you have the Talmud that these rabbis are referring to that came from ancient Babylonia. So you think God might have known something when he gave really good directions of what he wanted to have happen? He probably understood genetics and bloodlines and contamination of the people, the direction religiously that they would go, and he was trying to help Israel. But nonetheless, this guy isn't going to tell you any of that. The Nephilim, which the church day Gentile America keeps ignoring, right? That's just my sticking point. And I am a Gentile, so I can say that. Despite the giant bones that we dig up, the Vatican and others swoop in so rapidly to steal, subvert, hide, destroy, collect, which many have written about and put clips on YouTube. It's time to let the text speak and believe it, not try to reinterpret it. Then you come to, why did God, that is Yahweh, flood the earth? Mass murdering all of mankind and animal kind except 8 souls who found grace in the ark. Just being a meanie, because people like Richard Dawkins would tell you God was just being a meanie. Or this guy's other thing that many people cop out and say, it was just hyperbole. God didn't actually mean what he said. and basically a command to Joshua. So, it's not that fancy talk to try to change the meaning of what he did. No. Genesis 6 tells the answer, and it's the mixing of the fallen angels who had relations with the humans to produce a rival seed called the men of renown, that output, or the fallen ones, or the giants, which some still survived hidden in the earth, or there was a second incursion. People can debate on that. I don't know which it is. Maybe it could be both. I don't know. But seeing Goliath, the Nephilim, which was predicted after those days, right? It's all right there in Genesis 6. So they were. Genesis tells us what's up. Jude and Peter also explain these mysteries, right? They're not really mysteries when the Bible explains it out, but you ignore those things because your brain just can't go there, or because basically you're guilty of unbelief, really, in that particular instance. And Jesus explained it out pretty clear in Genesis 3:15 when he spoke of the war of the seeds. And later, the Antichrist who is coming will war against the seed Messiah. But of course, he wins. Christ wins. So, the seed of the woman would be coming, and you don't think Satan and his men, well, not men, but his battalion of fallen angels, you don't think that they came up with a master plan to create, basically like evil doppelgangers, if you will, that were part evil angel, part evil man for this aberrant group of people that are called the Canaanites or Amorites, and so on and so forth. I mean, come on. Does that not make just the most logical sense as to the next step that this little chess game would be about? And then Christ comes, but he just destroys the whole network plan of Satan to usurp power and control on this earth, and he offers a way for man to be saved. Do you think maybe God understood better than man when he gave those directions to Joshua? And for whatever reason, they were not followed correctly. Start letting the Bible speak for itself, and it all makes sense. And then Enoch 15 is crystal clear historical info too. It all makes sense. And where did the demons come from? Here you have another problem. You, good professor, have to explain to us, the people that are asking these questions, the unbelievers that are asking these questions, where did the demons come from? Ask the dead giants, whose spirits those are, roaming the earth, forbidden to be contacted, yet man keeps doing it anyhow. Things start to make a whole lot more sense. And then I was still annoyed with his answer. The Lord's not engaging in trash talk. Holy Yahweh, okay? As a 21st century American Gentile, I'm pretty sure the God of the universe that created oxygen and water and plants and animals and everything else, the most brilliant mind ever, was engaging in childish trash talk like sports teams would. That's ridiculous. He is good, God, and omniscient, and telling Joshua of Israel to wipe out these mutant half-breeds of bad human plus bad angel groups who were like giants and Israel like grasshoppers in their sight. That's in Numbers for a reason. Those little details, when people choose to ignore those, that's why there's confusion. This is why I personally discount Gentile teachings that ignore clear biblical teachings in multiple books of the Bible, especially that concert of information that when you put it all together, it makes more sense. This amputating the context out to put in some other tale, makes it look plastic and fake to hungry seekers of the Bible and unbelievers too, might I add, which we are called to help them and tell them the truth. Cheers, I would say that. I do want to show you one solitary thing in that weird new Israel Bible that they just cut Jesus out of it. I want to show you what they did highlight. I'll give them one good job on one thing. Okay, so the Israel Bible that they've told you, whether it's actually true or not, I don't know, but they've told you, which is a great marketing concept, just go ahead and lie if need be to create a stir to sell more of your product. I don't know if that's what's happening, but it could be. But anyhow, they say this is the #1 selling Bible, and you have Masonic entities such as the 700 Club, unions with Mark Biltz and all of his people that sell his books. He's signed on to this thing, and basically they've just written Jesus out of it. So I've done other videos talking about that before too, and it's all about honoring the God Hashem, whoever that is, the people, and the land of Israel. If you're a Gentile, we're not going to honor you. You're out of here. Well, anyhow, I will give them this one thing, that they have usurped control over the text, and they're the ones that have now put themselves in the position of telling you the truth. So much, not all, but much of the Gentile church, especially the seminaries, a lot of the churches, I can't say 100%, but many of the Gentile-oriented American churches refuse to even deal with this concept of the Nephilim, although they'll sit there and teach you about Goliath, who had his head cut off, and he was a giant. He was one of them, a fallen one. So they have a bit of a problem, but they don't seem to see past that blind spot, or they've set it up somehow to make it look like the church doesn't know something. Oh, you're wrong on another point. Here comes Israel swooping in to show you how you're wrong, right? Because they're trying to put forth that Christianity is wrong, Jesus is wrong. And so Rabbi Shapira and a whole host and network of other rabbis and other turncoat supposed Christian pastors are all too willing to cash in and say that Christianity is wrong, Jesus is wrong. We need to free the concept of Messiah from those horrible Gentile people. So Gentiles are not really making it easy on themselves by this type of constant ignoring of the text. Now, here is the one good thing this Israel Bible does. So we're over in Genesis 6, when men when men began to increase on the earth and daughters were born to them. The what? The divine beings saw how beautiful the daughters of men were and took wives from those that pleased them. So the angels that were divine beings that didn't also listen to God, because not only, as it turns out, not only do humans not listen to God, angels sometimes don't listen to God. And they, of course, don't call him Yahweh. They call him Hashem, because it's the God of this world that they're representing. It says, my breath shall not abide in man forever, since he too is flesh. Let the days allow him to be 120 years. Well, when you times 120 times the 50 blocks of jubilees, you get 6,000. I can't help but notice. And then Peter fills you in 2 Peter chapter 3 and says, be not ignorant of this, that according to the Lord's counting of time, one day is as 1,000 years. 6 days. And on the 6th day, we're told by some of the rabbis that Adam and Eve sinned on that day. Some people say it was a year later, an anniversary later. Don't know. But suffice it to say that you have a 6 day, 6,000 count under the curse, 6,000 years under the curse, very literal interpretation, which is what a lot of our early church fathers believed, that had direct apostle contact. And that great trumpet at the tail end, the fulfilling of the Feast of Atonement, the very day of the Feast of Atonement, the Lord comes and he fulfills that feast, and the great trumpet is blown, and then a little bit of information is given to you, the collection of the peoples from all over the earth, specifically Jews. I'm not sure if it's Gentiles too, but and the Gentiles will term that the second coming of Christ. So that's an end to the curse under Adam and Eve, and then we get new management. We'll be under new management, and that's when you have the seventh day rest, the Shabbat, which is Christ. But he fulfills that Shabbat, that rest that God engaged in. And rest just means stop or cease. It can also mean trust. And then for 1,000 years, he will rule and reign. So anyhow, God talks about, I will blot them from the earth, the men whom I created, men together with beasts, creeping things, birds of the sky, for I regret that I have made them, but Noah found favor. So when God cleansed the earth, he did it because of this hybrid union of evil angels plus evil humans that made really evil entities called the Nephilim, or what's been translated giants, these aberrant, strange entities. And Joshua was to wipe them out. For whatever reason, they didn't.